The distance between the bustling docks of Newport and the quiet stone walls of South Kingstown feels like a world away. But for Henry, the journey across the Narragansett Bay, sailing on a small packet boat that smelled of salt and tar, is worth every mile. Henry arrives in South Kingstown with a bit of Newport flair. He's wearing a coat cut a little sharper than the local farmhands, and he carries a small gift wrapped in brown paper. A tin of expensive tea, or perhaps a silk ribbon from a merchant on Thames Street. Sarah meets him near the edge of the Teft property. Their dates aren't at restaurants. They are long, slow walks through the orchards. As they walk, Henry tells her about the chaos of the Newport wharves, the sound of the town crier, and the sight of the massive ships returning from the West Indies. Sarah, in turn, teaches him the language of the land. She shows him where the best blackberries grow, near the Great Swamp, and tells him stories of their ancestors who settled this rocky soil long before the Revolution. They find a common language in their shared history. They talk about the Hollands and the Tefts, realizing that while their lives look different, their roots are tangled in the same Rhode Island earth. It happens on a late August evening, just as the dog days of summer are beginning to cool. The sun is dipping low over the South Kingstown hills, turning the tall grass into a sea of gold. Henry and Sarah are sitting on a low-slung stone wall, one of those ancient, moss-covered boundaries that the Hollands had helped build generations ago. The air is thick with the sound of cicadas and the distant lowing of cattle. Henry is unusually quiet. He's been telling her a story about a storm he saw in Newport Harbor, but his voice trails off. He looks at Sarah, who is adjusting her bonnet, her face framed by the soft twilight. In the city, everything moves fast, but here, time seems to hold its breath. "Sarah," he says softly. She turns to him, and for a moment, the Newport boy loses his worldly confidence. He reaches out and takes her hand, rough from farm work, but warm. He leans in, hesitant, giving her every chance to turn away. But she doesn't. The kiss is brief and tastes of the salt air that blows off the Atlantic and over the South County fields. It's a bridge between his world of ships and hers of soil. When they pull apart, the crickets seem louder, and the first stars are beginning to blink over the Narragansett. In that moment, the move from the city to the country is decided. Henry knows that wherever Sarah is, that is where his home will be. As Sarah and Henry sat on that moss-covered stone wall, they weren't alone in the landscape. While many history books of that era spoke of the Narragansett in the past tense, the reality was that the tribe was still a vital, breathing part of the South Kingstown community. Just a half-mile from where Sarah and Henry shared their kiss, the tree line thickened toward the edge of the Great Swamp. There, a small settlement of cedar shingle houses sat tucked away from the main post roads. A young Narragansett woman named Keziah stood near the edge of a shared cornfield. She watched the sun dip low, the same golden light that was hitting Henry's Newport coat and Sarah's pink dress. To Sarah and Henry, the stone wall was a boundary of their farm. To Keziah, it was a relatively new scar across an ancient map of trails that her ancestors had walked for 10,000 years. Keziah wasn't wearing the buckskins of the 1600s. Like Sarah, she wore a practical cotton dress, but her ears were adorned with purple wampum beads, the quahog gold, harvested from the very shores where Henry had boarded his boat in Newport. As the evening cooled, Keziah's father, an elder who worked as a stone mason for the local farmers, walked up the path. He had likely helped build the very wall Henry and Sarah were sitting on. He knew the weight of every rock in South Kingstown. He nodded toward the young couple in the distance. "The new ones always think they've discovered the sunset," he whispered in the Narragansett tongue, a dry smile touching his face. The Indians of Sarah and Henry's time weren't hidden away. They were the backbone of the local economy. Narragansett men were famous as the best stonemasons and mariners in Rhode Island. Henry might have even worked alongside a Narragansett deckhand on his way over from Newport. Narragansett women often traveled to Newport or the Kingston Village Center to sell hand-woven ash splint baskets and medicinal herbs. The Tefts and Hollands likely bought their brooms or harvest baskets from tribal members. While Sarah and Henry dreamed of their future, the Narragansett were fighting a different battle. The battle to keep their land and their identity in a state that was trying to detribalize them. Just 40 years after Sarah and Henry's kiss, the Rhode Island General Assembly would try to legally abolish the tribe. But the Narragansett refused to disappear. While your ancestors were building their lives on that land, the original caretakers were right there with them, navigating a world that was changing for everyone. Rhode Island and Providence Plantation, which simply means Rhode Island in God's land. We will always remember how great America was. Perhaps someday, we can make America great again. This is a huge year. On July 4th, 2026, the United States will celebrate its 250th anniversary, also known as the semi-quincentennial. Happy birthday, America!